Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It is me, once again, screaming into the void of the internet. So I have something that I kind of wanted to discuss, right? And I think now that I am pretty much happy, for the most part, more or less, I do kind of want to discuss something that is very commonplace in this community that people like to talk about. And that's the concept of luck in life, right? Based on things. Now, obviously, a massive uh, point of contention that people like to talk about in this community is luck based on appearance. And that is obviously true. Like when you really think about how there are just some people born looking decent enough to, like, especially in today's day and age, like just hop on social media and, just make an account about just random crap and, they just got a camera pointed at them and they're just swimming in attention and, ads want to like market with these people and stuff like that. Yes, it is obviously, um, it's obviously true that yes, some of these people, especially females, do get lucky with this kind of, what would you even call it? I guess this kind of world in general, like obsessed with appearance, But I do want to say something in relation to that I think that a lot of people kind of overstep. And yeah, while luck does play a massive part of it, and trust me, I was a NEET for a very long time, so I'm not saying this as like, oh, I'm better than you people or something like that. Uh, if you choose to just lie there and rot, nothing will change. Like one of the biggest things that we have to acknowledge is that luck isn't just appearance. Like we could talk about like luck in a sense of the fact that, hey, I did get lucky in a lot of aspects. My childhood was terrible. My folks were unreliable. And for the longest time, I basically had no choice but to eat, but at the end of the day, I was born in America, like, I could have been born in China in some freaking rural area where I don't even have an education and the most I can expect is to just farm. Like heck, I could even be born in America to like just incredibly rural people, and I have nothing but cornfields to look forward to. And while a lot of people may look at that and go, "Oh, that's a simple life," I think that you have to have the privilege. Let's just be honest. To choose. Like you're coming from like the city and looking at that and going, "Okay, that looks very peaceful," because you're comparing it to the city life. But that's all that those people know, and if they did want to try and like change something, it's going to be quite an undertaking, to say the least, considering that they're in a small town. Everything is miles and miles, hours away. So trying to change that station in life is going to be quite the uphill battle. So yes, appearances do matter. I'm not one of these cocksuckers telling you that appearance doesn't matter. They absolutely do. But let's just be honest, guys. If we were born in America in a lot of aspects, like despite everything that's happening, we are very lucky. The opportunities that we have available to us in comparison to a lot of the world is really just night and day. Like the entire reason why I was able to escape essentially the chaos from my family, essentially the chaos from the stupidity of the decisions that they were making, is because I had the opportunity to land a pretty okay paying job and I could move here. I'm not surrounded by the ghetto, by the ratchets, the hoodlums, the nibbas, the sisters. I'm not surrounded by that because I had the opportunity to get a well-paying job for the most part, and here I am. You know, luck does play a massive role in that. Let's just be honest. Like, if it was still like where I was originally, um, the most that I could probably ever even see myself getting paid is like 13, 14 bucks an hour, you know? Whereas over here, I'm getting paid almost 20. It's not 20, but it's almost 20. So, yeah, it's luck plays a massive part in that. And despite how crazy, my life has been, I am incredibly lucky to have gotten into this position where I'm stable, you know? And I kind of want to talk from that standpoint to lead into another point. You know, despite the station that you get in life, you do kind of have to choose what you want to make of it. You know, a lot of us in this space, we all come from some really effed up stations. You know, people that really shouldn't have had kids. They had no plan for us, no future for us. You know, our lives were riddled and ruled by chaos. And for the longest time, it beat us down so bad that we just lied there and just said whatever. You know, we just kind of went numb and we just didn't care. But I can say this from personal experience that, again, when you choose to just lie there and do nothing, it's your right to do it. You know, I don't really feel like anyone should have the gall to look down on you and just tell you you're a wimp and stuff because they don't know what you've gone through. They don't know how much you've tried to climb out the pit. So if you want to do it, I understand it. But at the same time, to me, you know, like when I was like eating, I didn't sit around here and go about like how miserable I was if I wasn't trying. You know, like when I made those videos talking about needing, I was trying. I was looking for jobs. I was walking miles. If you go back like a year, if you want, I mean, you're not going to, but obviously, if you've been with me for a while, then you'll know. Like I was walking miles to like, you know, job interviews and stuff like that. And even if I get there on time, despite walking miles, okay, to these job interviews, I couldn't even get an interview. And geez, you want to talk about feeling defeated? You know, you may have just walked 5 miles to an interview, got there on time before the interview, and you couldn't even get an interview. You know, like this is, it was just insane. It was insane. You know, but I say that from the standpoint of this, like I understand why all of us, you know, because I feel like in my heart I'm always going to be able to relate to a NEET, you know, because I don't forget where I come from. Never have, I never will. I'm never gonna like get all uppity and stuff like that and be like, oh, you guys just aren't trying hard enough. That's ridiculous. I know the situation, and I don't really know if I'd have a job if I had stayed, you know, where I originally came from. You know, like I originally am from like, you know, a kind of city area, and now I'm still in the city, but it's like it's a very large city and it's spread out. I don't want to say names because again, people are very clever, so I'm not going to say names, but I don't know if I'd have a job if I stayed in, you know, the city that I am originally from. You know, because I was looking there for God knows how long. And even when I first came here, it took me like, you know, 2 months to get this job. So, yeah, I understand why a lot of guys get into this and they just kind of just sit there and just they rot, you know. I get it. Because, you know, again, a lot of the times the hand that we're dealt in the beginning is a massive indicator of how difficult or easy our life is going to be. And considering that most of us had parents that really didn't give us a good hand, it put us on a very uphill battle. But, you know, like one of the things that I'm trying to talk about is the fact that despite us being in that station, at a certain point, you have to kind of take control of the reins of it. I'm not going to tell you that everything is going to be okay once you take the reins and that you're going to have absolute control over everything. You obviously won't. You know, like if you're one of these guys that feels as though you are subhuman because of looks and stuff like that, that's going to be very difficult to change for a myriad of reasons. If it's actually like certain birth defects or, you know, things that you feel like height and stuff like that, that's going to be hard to change. You know, that's going to be hard to even try and move past that just from a standpoint of like, you know, emotional stability. Like when you're being treated like that all the time, that's hard to move past, you know. If you're in that standpoint due to feelings of a desire to like, you know, have love and stuff like that, um, it's going to be hard to kind of rewrite your brain to those things, you know. I originally, and I say this before, like even before I found this community, I just kind of knew that I was different in terms of how I viewed love because I had 5 sisters. So my view on love was already very skewed by being around them. And even when I did have a girlfriend or two, because I have dated and I have had a girlfriend and stuff like that, I would say, you know, like I love you and all that stuff, and we go on our little dates, and I felt like it was nice. But I also knew, because I'm a very like hyper self-aware person, right? I knew that she didn't really love me. She didn't really love me for me. She loved the fact that she had an easier time in life because somebody was paying for her, you know? And in a certain aspect, I guess you could say that I felt like that was just, the thing to do because, hey, I'm a guy, right? And that's kind of one of the things that I'm talking about when I mention your station. There are certain things that you kind of just accept without questioning that, oh, this is just the thing to do. And I think in a certain aspect of a lot of like neets and doomers, they kind of feel as though, hey, this is just the thing that I have to do. I have to just lie here and rot because there's nothing for me. No one's ever going to love me. Wage caging is garbage, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I kind of want to talk I kind of want to talk for a minute about, again, taking the reins. Um, it's fine to understand where you're stationed in life, and I think that that's something that a lot of people do need to admit, and that's something that I'm very pleased with this community, that they're willing to accept where they are in life. A lot of people want to pretend like, hey, I'm like, living it up, and like I'm basically like, $1,000, $3,000 in like credit card debt, and I'm living it up, and I'm spending all this money living a lifestyle that I can't afford. I very much appreciate that there is a massive sense of realism, despite it being cynical. There is a massive sense of realism in the doomer space, a massive sense of realism. And unfortunately, it usually just kind of boils down to fatalism a lot of times, where they feel as though they shouldn't even attempt to do anything. But I kind of want to talk about that in a certain aspect. And I know I keep saying it. It's mainly just one of these things where it's like, guys, I acknowledge that life is difficult. I acknowledge that there are desires that you have that you feel like you'll never see realized. But one of the things you have to understand is, if you have desires, the only way desires are met is when you take action. Like, it is very unfortunate that in the realm of perhaps looks, if it is looks for you, right? You do not look a certain way. And hey, listen, I'm not necessarily the most gorgeous looking thing ever. Like, allow me to go ahead and, air quotes, dox myself, if you will. I am 5'6", so apparently I'm a manlet, right? I am usually maxing out at 125 pounds. I have not weighed myself in some time because I do not own a scale. So maybe I should try and go to Publix and, you know, report that to you. I have been like working out consistently and, consuming a lot of protein, but I have a very fast metabolism, so that's pretty hard for me. But yeah, 5'6", 120 pounds. I have a baby face. Like, I am 27 years old, and I actually look younger than a lot of teenagers. So, yeah. So, hey, there it is. And I'm only just now moving out of my folks. And I've moved out from them, like, for quite a few months now. But the point is, it took me till I was almost 27, so I was 26, to move away from my folks. Like, I'm not going to pretend like those were like very easy years and stuff like that, just living with them and eating it. It wasn't. It was very difficult. But the fact of the matter is, like, I chose to accept that I had to make some sort of change. I had to get out of there at all costs. At all costs. I had to get out of there. And I did. And it's because I accepted where I was, and I decided, am I satisfied here? Am I pleased with the station that I'm in right now? Or do I want change? And more than anything, so desperately, I wanted change. I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to get out of the ghetto. I was sick of the nibbas, the ratchets, the sisters, the arguing. I was sick of it all. And so I applied myself. I dedicated myself to, the wage cage, if you will, trying to get a wage cage. And it didn't work out, originally. And then it took us moving up here to get it. And once I had it, I saved and saved and saved until I got out. And yes, I could try and accredit that all to myself, but I don't deny, because I am talking about luck for a minute. Yes, luck played a massive role, like I mentioned. Luck played a massive role, but at the same time, we cannot deny the effort that went in. I'm not one of these people that's going to pretend to tell you that if you apply yourself, that you're going to have air quote success, what this world likes to define as success, fame, fortune, money, women, blah 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 blah, right? But what you can get is you can move from the station that you are in life. I'm not going to pretend like you're going to take massive leaps, where maybe you're at station 1 and people are acting like you're going to jump to station 20, but hey, maybe instead of station 1, you can go to station 2. You know, maybe station 1 is just like a freaking desk fan in the summer, and station 2 is straight up AC. I don't know about you, and maybe this is just me, but I would very much prefer to be at station 2, than just deal with a desk fan in the summer when I could have AC. And that's kind of how I saw it. And I think that that's kind of how a lot of us kind of need to see it, because there's a lot of defeatism in this space. And I'm not going to tell you again what to do with your life, because it's not about trying to impress anyone. It's just about being able to look and say, are you all right with who you are every day in the mirror? And I am. you know I'm not working out because I'm trying to attract gals. I'm not, saving my money because, I'm trying to build a life for a family. I'm doing this because for the longest I have been poor. I've been broke. I've had nothing. And now, for the first time in my life, because of the choices that I am doing and stuff like that, and obviously the effort, uh, there are experiences that I can experience that I have never had I've never gotten the chance to experience. Like, listen, let me explain something like this, for example. Literally for the first time in my life, last week, I drank eggnog. It wasn't like alcohol, but it was just eggnog. I never had it. I never had that experience because it's like, for the most part, like, we didn't. It's not that we were so poor that we couldn't like afford food or anything. It's just like certain experiences and like going places and stuff like that. I never had that. Like when it was going to for groceries, it was like, no, you were specifically getting this and nothing else. There wasn't really a lot of impulse shopping, which was a very good thing. Like when you're not impulse shopping, but if I wanted something, I couldn't really just go, hey, can we get this? Like, and so when I had that, I was like, wow, this is incredible. You know, and so for the first time in my life, there's so many different experiences that I can, you know, experience because of the choices that I have decided to say, hey, this is what's best for me. And what I kind of want to get across is, guys, despite your station, despite how much of a factor luck does play, let's not kid ourselves, luck does play a massive role. We cannot and should not deny the amounts of effort that also plays a role. I could simply talk about luck till I'm blue in the face, but if I just say, all right, I'm going to leave it all to luck now and not get up in the morning and go to work and, you know, put in my wage cage hours, this life that I have now, that's going to go away very quickly. And so I don't deny that for a moment. I acknowledge the fact that my efforts are just as important as the luck, if not even more so. Because if the luck is what gets me in the door, the effort is what keeps me holding that door open. You know what I mean? So I kind of want to just conclude this by saying this, guys. I know how it feels to be in a station in life that you don't deserve to be in. You try your hardest and eventually you just kind of give up and you just sit there. And if you choose to accept that station, if you're fine with it, then okay. But if you aren't fine with it, one of the things you really have to do is just learn to get up and say, I'm not happy in this station. How do I get out of the station? And I'm not saying this is some freaking guru, buy my course or some bullcrap. I'm not saying that. But one of the most important things to solving a problem is acknowledging it. And there are a lot of guys in this space that acknowledge the problem, but are so defeated that they don't even want to attempt to kind of like, take action to get rid of it. And I'm not going to pretend like you can get rid of all problems. You can't. Obviously, you can't, But there are things that you can change if you take that step. So I kind of just want to encourage you guys to take that step. Because again, I say this a lot because I mean it. I'm not special. I just said again who I am. If you need me to say it, I'll say it again. 5'6", 125 pounds, baby face, 27 years old. And I'm basically at an entry position, But at the end of the day, I still have my peace. I have my peace after a life of chaos. And it's surreal. And it takes me getting used to it. It really does. But I have my peace, and that's all that matters to me. I'm no longer miserable like I was in my previous neighborhood. So it's really just about taking one day at a time, one step at a time, and deciding what it is that you want. And if I can do it, again, I'm not really anybody, And I haven't gone through nearly as much of the harrowing accounts that I hear from some of you. If I can do it, I know that you can. I know that you can, but you have to believe in yourself. That's one of the biggest problems. We get so defeated that we don't even want to believe in ourselves, but you can, guys. That's why it just takes, you have to just take one day at a time. I'm not asking you to like make miracles happen. I'm not asking you to, be Atlas. I'm often in times encouraging you to just Atlas shrug, just drop the boulder, drop the world, little things, small burdens. Pick the small things up first, Just try and take the pieces of your life and start small and then put them together, you know? But I'm gonna go ahead and conclude it here because I actually have to get up early in the morning, so that's going to suck. Not as much sleep for me tonight, but hey, it's part of life. Want to thank you guys for watching. I really do. I appreciate all who leaves comments and talks about, stuff going on with them. If you feel open enough to talk about that stuff, I appreciate that. I really do. And I hope that you know that there's no judgment here. There's no judgment here for you. Even if you disagree, there's no judgment here. So I hope that you guys stay encouraged. And as always, there's life beyond your pain, guys. There is. Just hang in there through the bad days so that we can enjoy the good ones. Thank you once again. God bless. I will see you next time.